This is the first of our Avantex conferences, one of our major concerns, both for exhibitors and visitors. Really, we're interested in thinking about how technology and innovation can meet current concerns in fashion. Of course, we know what they are. We all know what they are. It's the fact that consumers have high demands. Journalists relay that. Of course, I'm going to say that because we have journalists left and right of me. We're going to be talking about this. And of course, what we're going to be broaching today, we have a problem with the interpretation for our British friend, who's on my right. If that could be ironed out, that would be helpful. Anyway, biosourcing is the topic for today. Tomorrow's revolution. Of course, this is already underway. But to talk about this, we're lucky enough to have with us Sabrina Maroc, who's on my left, Caroline Legendre, who's opposite me, and then Cogia, Studio Cogia. So, what do you do? Can you just briefly tell us what you do? Yes, right. We are exhibiting just over the way. Please go and see the stand after this conference. So we share knowledge with bio manufacturers, everything gravitating around how to manufacture using microorganisms. So you build bridges, you gather ideas together, you communicate information. We translate and write articles on businesses, and we want to share our knowledge with a view to about how to manufacture materials using bacteria. And what about you, Caroline Legendre? Green bird dress. Goodness me, that sounds quite involved. Yes, Caroline is my name, and it's been 2 years now that I've been assisting brands and textile brands, even beyond that really, with a view to creating co-responsible, joint responsible, environmentally friendly materials that are recyclable. And we're starting to look at bacteria-based materials. This is what we're starting to see on a daily basis through workshops, where I've put together a number of modules, and one specifically devoted to bacteria-based materials. I initiate and explain to corporate representatives the potential alternatives. Open biofabrics. I talk with them to talk about these colorants that are bacteria-based and bacteria-based materials to kind of make these concepts more widespread and build partnerships among suppliers, but also corporates. Thank you very much. No doubt in the Q&A we'll be able to properly clarify what you're talking about.
Explain to us what is your job, what is the studio working on?
So I studied textile design in Stuttgart.
You?
I studied textile design in Stuttgart, so I'm a professional textile designer. But I was changing my way of looking at textiles within my studies, so I was focusing on sustainable materials. And I do have a scholarship from a university, so I am supported by the government to resource and create new materials based on algae as a fast-growing resource.
Are you audacious enough in order to explain to us what is sustainability, sustainable textile? For you.
For me.
And for the other two.
For me, sustainable textiles are either textiles that can be recycled 100% or are based on natural materials. I, for myself...
So you see, there is a small difference, if I dare say, if we consider biosourcing and sustainability. Are they exactly the same way for you, the same approach?
I think it can be, but I mean,
Lovely.
I'm mainly focusing on algae, so that's my field of expertise. So I'm creating a biopolymer made out of red algae, like agar, as a base, and dyeing it with leftover fabric dye or dye bath, and create brushes and biodegradable sequins out of it.
And you work in your one studio?
Yes.
Absolutely. You set up your studio
Yes. I set
after
it up.
your studies.
I set it up in Stuttgart, but
In
it will be
Stuttgart, yeah.
moved to Berlin very soon because in Berlin is quite a big green fashion environment and a good,
So
good
you will
community.
explain that later. Thank you so
Exactly.
much indeed.
That's clear, crystal clear, biosourcing for you, Madame Legendre. No doubt we'll have one or two questions put to you in a moment. Yes, biosourcing, as it was said a moment ago, there are two notions here. Sustainability on the one hand, so this is material that can be long-lasting and eco-friendly. And then biosourcing, for me at least, is something entirely different. Today, we have major considerations revolving around the environment, and biosourcing tries to offer solutions that to make sure that the industry will have specific needs in biodegradable materials or colorants. They can turn away from petrochemicals and grasp these new approaches that can be industrialized. So I think there are two distinct things there. That's of interest here because you talk about the industrialization of the process, because we know that the textile manufacturing chain is scattered all over the world, if you will, or broken up into component parts. We could talk about this in the press conference with Chinese representatives, and the Chinese have decided to embark upon this, but trying to show a certain amount of responsibility in textiles. They signed up to this literally a moment ago. But when we're talking about world industry, of course you have to think about transportation. You don't want to muddle everything up, but biosourcing, something that's manufactured the other side of the world, maybe there's another environmental dimension there that has to be thought about in terms of transport. Biosourcing, you start with that possibly. Right, so biosourcing for you, Sabrina Marok. What does that involve? Well, it involves starting off with a definition. Well, that's what we're trying to establish, and we've tried to do that from the beginning. Well, this flows from biomass, in other words, producing with biodegradable material. That's the starting point, is it? Well, for me, at least, yes. You can manufacture a new material from biomass materials, therefore, that are taken from recyclable or renewable materials, but to pick up on industrial needs and meet them, often they're mixed. They become hybrid with other materials that they are not necessarily recyclable or biodegradable. So that's the major problem then with the recycling. Yes, we saw that with some brands. I'm not going to name names, of course, even though it's a fair that revolves around brands and fashion, but some ingredients are recyclable and others not. That's right. Hence the problem, therefore. Well, that's right. Technical and economic problem. That's right. I mean, you have to be careful with your communication, with marketing, advertising, and of course, manufacturers. Have to think about what they're doing. It's not because it's bio-sourced that it's something necessarily that's renewable, as it were. So biosourcing, okay. So that's the materials. I've noted one or two questions for you. Traceability, in addition to materials, commitment in terms of the supply chain. Where do you step in, Caroline, in that realm? Perhaps you're right across the entire chain? No, not entirely, because there are things where you need to have experts, particularly when talking about the value chain. You can't step in. I mean, you're talking about the supply chain. That's right. I mean, I'm really very much involved in the materials side of things, where we're looking at traceability for the fabric. Where does it come from? In how is it manufactured? In what plant and what have you? So you have to think about that. And we really try to have massive traceability. Of course, it's very difficult. The more you move up right to the beginning, even to the cotton fields, it becomes really, really difficult, and it's increasingly the case today.
Traceability?
I think the fashion industry is big enough that different groups can tackle different problems, and if one company or one research group is working on traceability, let's say blockchain or whatever, and the other half is working on biomaterials, biodegradable usage. I think there are enough people, enough force, enough creative minds that can change the fashion industry in total.
In Germany, for example, because you live in Germany, in Berlin, if I well understood, you think the European companies are at the same level, or the German are much more engaged on these fields? Like the Netherlands, for example, or North of Europe?
I think that we are trying to change to be more sustainable, but I think one of the issues is that sustainability is not a fixed word. It doesn't mean the same to everyone. So if you say recycling is sustainability, not everyone agrees with you. They say, no, it has to be like biodegradable, like fully, and be in a cycle. And so it's like every time you talk about sustainability, you have different reactions and different opinions on it. So I think even within a group of like sustainable experts, everyone is having their own like opinion about how to create something sustainable. And I think it is a good way because of course the market is growing as well. So it's a good business opportunity. So everyone's hopping on sustainability, but not everyone is doing the same within like changing their own system.
It could be the same, if I dare say, in the mind, of the consumer. Because the consumer need an exact, not exact, yes, maybe exact, an exact information.
And that's the big issue. So we have quite a lot of labels, and the consumer doesn't know where to buy or what is like proper, what's good. So, and they try to be good. They don't want to be like, let's say, evil in their consuming, but if they are not informed properly, and if there is like a mix-up with many different labels and many different words for sustainability or way of producing, they get confused really easily. And I mean, if you have a family, you don't have the time to dig into the understanding of what does that label mean, how are they producing, I don't know, how viscose is produced or whatever. It's like, it's such a big field, and even I have the feeling, even though I'm researching quite for a long time, even I have the feeling I don't understand the whole system, because it's so big, it's such a big chain and supplier chain. So I think we have to like break it down and create something where you can understand sustainability in a whole, and just like a checklist or a list of companies where you can buy with a good feeling and embracing sustainability.
Do you agree with that, about this problem basically in properly understanding the various steps leading to a consumer? A commitment on the part of industrialists and manufacturers. Yes, well, as a fashion professional, of course, it's difficult to have clear-cut information. For a consumer, therefore, a final consumer, no doubt, it's totally opaque, even though efforts have been made to demuddy the waters. If you put yourself in the shoes, I mean, here we're talking about revolution. I mean, when you talk about revolution, if you put yourself in the shoes of a consumer or in the mind of a consumer, perhaps then that's a way of muddling through, isn't it? I know to start with the consumer and go upstream. Consumer, I suppose, understands certain words, recyclable, let's say, or consuming less as possible, maintaining products and what have you. If materials are biosourced, if they are eco-friendly, if they meet a certain criteria of quality, then isn't that something understandable for the consumer? Yes, but what I would say, I would caution, a word of caution. It's not because it's recyclable that it's necessarily virtuous or good. Not necessarily. Well, that's why we were referring to biosourcing, and I was loading my question a bit. Well, yes, let's look at the materials. Materials themselves. They are recycled. That's all very well and good, but in order to be usable, they're going to be mixed with natural products. But a pair of jeans, for example, that will be manufactured with cotton and recyclable materials. But at the end of your lifespan for your gene, the recyclable procedures are not necessarily properly honed to get the best out of the gene. So we want materials right from the starting point that are biodegraded, if you will. And that would avoid artificial inputs. You can't avoid certain inputs. And I mean, if you think about bottles, for example, or bottles, plastic bottles retrieved from the sea, for example, that's a good point because we're drawing value out of rubbish, if you will. But over and beyond that, you have to think about, well, what becomes of these products after the fact, after their useful life? Okay, so thinking about the study that was done with fiber manufacturing, the way of, say, thinking about recycling, you want to get in there as early as possible, building in certain functions and features in the fibers, because the fibers have natural origins, but not necessarily fully natural, but they could facilitate, therefore, recycling. Yes, of course, the best thing possible would be to have something that's eco-harmonious right from the start. So we have a manufacturing process that has the least possible eco-impact. And what you generally do, what you currently see, is that you're going to take the end of the chain and you'll say to yourself, okay, what we're going to be able to do with this waste in order to draw value from this waste for a second lifespan. But, you know, then, of course, the environmental side has already been hit. So you've got to think upstream about the environmental impact.
We have to organize the things, if I dare so, to organize the production from the very, very beginning.
Absolutely, but not only the beginning. I think
before the beginning.
What changes right now is that in the design process and in the process of making new materials, we are not thinking about just how to put it on the market, but we are also thinking of what is happening with the material after the usage. So we are thinking about the end as well. So we try to create a cycle, and because for a long time it was like a linear system. So we always thought, oh, what could look cool? What's a good feature on the textile? What's a new print that should be put out there? But now we're thinking, okay, good print is important, but we should know what's happening at the end of the usage, and how can we create a system where the company who put the material out on the market is reusing their own resources. I mean, it's not only about sustainability, it's also about economics. I mean, the resources are out there. There's so many fabrics shipped all over the world. It's gold, basically. It's material we could use, and we didn't think of that for a long time because it was not necessary. And but now we are in need of new ideas for resourcing, and that's why bio resourcing is stepping in, because we are thinking about the end as well, not only the beginning of design.
Caroline, do you agree with the other Caroline? Well, how can I put it? I would agree with Sabrina and Caroline, particularly about managing the materials after the fact. As was said, today, I mean, if you think about eco-design and you're trying to avoid mixing two fibers together, at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to separate them. If we were to deal with that, then that would facilitate considerably recycling. Because recycling for jeans, that's another problem. Time-wise, it's very complex. The top of the jeans, for example, where you have buttons and zips, you haven't got time to unravel all that. And so all that's cut, basically. And so you're just using the legs of the jeans, and all the rest is burned. So maybe biosourcing could be useful when thinking about the threads. Find some threads that can dissolve under a certain temperature, or could therefore be industrialized under that banner. And as you said, Sabrina, it's true. Recycling isn't necessarily a solution in fine, because I mean, if you work with recyclable materials, you're breaking threads, which means that quality gets less and less as time goes by. So to working in a closed loop, that's all very well and good. But why not opening things up, and not to make a jean, therefore, but maybe use it for other purposes, for insulation, let's say, because a pair of jeans, you're recycling, therefore, a product for another purpose altogether than that for which it was initially designed. That's right. I mean, that's a worthwhile point. Yes, that's an interesting point you make. You think the same, do you? Yes, of course. Yeah. It's really interesting that you're talking about the fact that there's a deterioration of quality in the fibre after each recycling, which means you can't do it until the cows come home, basically. So it's a linear economy paradigm. Still, it's putting basically a band-aid on what's happening. You can reuse some materials, but you're always thinking in a linear fashion. So we shouldn't be linear in our thinking. I mean, how do we get out of that kind of paradigm? Because here we're talking about revolution. I mean, tomorrow's revolution, that's the title of our conference, and we're embarking on that road, that's true. But if you're talking about revolution, you're turning everything on its head. I mean, a revolution, it's a cycle, isn't it? Everything's turned on its head. Should we be doing that? Or, I mean, I'm just throwing out a question really to be a bit provocative, but perhaps we should be thinking about going step by step, industrializing things or manufacturing things, and marketing, advertising, because we all know that there's, what public opinion wants that has to be taken into consideration and warrants being listened to. This prompts thought, doesn't it? Well, I don't think everything should be broken and we should start from scratch, because anyway, it's not possible. That's the first point. And the second point, everything to do with biomanufacturing currently, is that most companies try to manufacture fibers that are suited to machine tools that are currently in factory floors. And so that's an energy saver and a cost saver, not to have to rebuild or redesign machines for these new threads. And I think that's a first incremental step. So we need to have materials that are biodegradable, yes, and that will have a lesser environmental impact, but also be able to run through existing machines and tooling. It's always good to use what we currently have rather than building everything from scratch.
I mean, every machine that has been built already has a better CO2 footstep than the one that is like it needs to be produced to like work with the new yarn. So in terms of like creating a whole different machinery just for like sustainable yarn, I mean just for sustainable yarns, it's not in balance. So it's good and it's efficient to use the infrastructure we already have, and to use the knowledge that is given by the mechanics and by everyone who was working with those machines. And I think with the knowledge of the ones using the machines and designers or creative people, we can work together because their experience helps us to create a sustainable material, because we know what it needs to, or like how it needs to be, if it needs to be like slick to run properly on the machine. So we need the input from the ones working with the yarn and with the machine in order to create something that is actually used in the market, and it can be actually used within the infrastructure already that is already there.
Thank you very much, because it strikes me, I mean, thanks to you, we're thinking really about the pathway for manufacturing. It's not a revolution fully, because we're not throwing everything out the window, but there's a revolution to a certain extent because there's a cycle, socially, economically, and what have you. But now let's turn to some concrete examples. Can we cite one or two hands-on examples about what you're doing currently, either over your stands here in this exhibition space, or maybe current concerns that professionals such as you are laying out in the public arena? Well, for most brands that are here in this exhibition hall, the state-of-the-art staff, I mean, one of their criteria is to work with biosourced materials. Let me give you an example. In biomanufacturing, work with microorganisms such as bacteria, such as yeast, mycelium, or algae. The bacteria can reproduce itself to secrete colorants, but they need to eat, of course, and so to do that, they're going to use glucose. Now, most companies that use these bacteria to produce colorants are trying to use farming waste to feed basically their bacteria. So I would say that is already a fabulous point, and it's starting to loop the loop, if you like, of this circular production that we're looking at.
So I have an example, concrete example. I have a company that is specialized in snowboarder backpacks. So this is a backpack that needs to be very resistant and also needs to protect the backbone of the snowboarder. So what I've been asked to do, this company asked me to come up with a backpack which is completely biodegradable. So why biodegradable? What's the reason behind that? Where is this company based? Yeah, there's a company based in the north of France. And my mission, or the request that they gave me, was that currently the brands know that there's lots of innovation that is currently taking place, but what can actually be commercialized, industrialized, which is the most promising. So we've got colorants and yarns. So I had to kind of make an inventory of what currently exists so that I could come up with some alternatives. An alternative to the clip, because this backpack is clipped onto a plastic accessory, so I had to find an alternative to this plastic accessory. And so I also had to think about the polyester covering that's currently used, so that I could come up with a prototype of a product which could be sold in the future. So how did you find that? Oh, it's already finished. It's already, oh, well, very well done then. Bravo, but I'm very impressed by all this. In terms of all these different possibilities, you actually found an alternative to these products that weren't biodegradable. Or we used, we had these materials with 100% polyester, so I had a kind of some specifications I had to respect. Yeah, you have to think about the machines and the technical specifications. And you also have to think about the final price. Because this is for a very specific purpose, and it might be quite pricey. Yes. So even if currently the companies that are able to create products that are 100% recycled algae, so of course they have a certain price. It depends on the economy of scale. So my role then. This is a very concrete example, and so the environment and coming up with biodegradable products, this is what the customers actually want, and they want also full transparency, and the fact that in all those companies that I deal with, apart from the fact that the customer wants this, also the employees have their own ethics. They want to come up with something which is sustainable, which has a full traceability. And then we have the economic factors. A company is always a company. In order to remain a leader, of course, you have to come up with new materials or find a new alternative before your competitor does. Thank you for that very nice example. Can you give us...
You are studying by these days, and which kind of demand and solutions you can provide to the manufacturers?
So I, as I said before, I studied textile design, and I realized that I don't want to work in the field as it is right now. So I came up with an idea of using algae as a fast-growing resource to provide biopolymer. So I use the leftover dye bath from like natural colors, natural dye that I dyed my fabric with, and create a biopolymer out of agar, which is like a vegan gelatin substitute made out of red algae. And I created this system where I create sequins that are fully biodegradable, and even those sequins can be recycled into a new biopolymer. So like the sequence itself can be recycled into like a new charge of sequence, or they are biodegradable. So you can put them in your home waste and or in your garden if you feel like. So, and from my experience, because I don't have a background of chemistry, or I don't have an idea about biology in general, because I'm studied or I'm professional in design. But it was really easy to start and to experiment with bio-based materials. And if you start like researching on the internet, there are so many open source recipes and ideas, and a community that really supports each other. So if you have questions about biopolymer, you can ask someone who is already working with it, and you can create your own field and your own aesthetics. And that's what I did, and I want to support everyone and lead someone to their own experience. So I do have an Instagram account where I like show the whole process of me either struggling or having like a success in my way of designing with biopolymer. And the difference is that you're working with the material and you're experimenting with it, and sometimes things work out not the way you expected, but it creates something new, and you just go with it. And that's the good thing about biomaterial, because it has somehow a mind of its own. And sometimes something really awesome, really great can come out of this. And I really want to support everyone and really encourage everyone to just experiment a little bit, because I'm doing it in my home kitchen. So it's like I don't have a laboratory, and I'm still producing something that is completely biodegradable, because the materials are already out there. So let's say agar is used a lot in food, like the Asian cuisine is working a lot with it. So I'm already using materials that are provided for the market. I don't have to like create a new way or new material. I'm just using what's on the market and what's produced already, but put it in a different
That is
context.
to say, there is enough materials, enough solution, enough open sources, as you said, in order to give a nice answer and bring solutions to the manufacturers, to the industry?
I think like industry is a whole different level. So
Yes.
I'm working in a very experimental way. So it's like no one in the industry would say like, yeah, we can produce that easily. But it can be developed, and you need some expertise, as I said before, some scientists, someone who is actually working in the textile industry, and together we can create something that is can be industrialized. But it's a process.
So, how long have you been doing this? So if we listen to Caroline, how long has this been going on? Because this process has already started. We can say that this process has already started. How long has this been going on, and in what respect have we got these solutions? Well, I could say that, at least as I'm concerned, I think that I've been working on this for about 10 years, perhaps a bit more than that. Perhaps I was a little bit too young at the time, but at least 10 years, I would say. So, yes, this process has started 5 years ago. There were some specific conferences, future textile food. So there were kind of visits, and this went right around the globe, and this allowed us to kind of take a snapshot of what was going on at the time. So you can see these dresses that are made from orange peel, lemon peel, quite remarkable things, and this was already 10 years ago. So I think that biosourcing, I would say that it's already been around for 10 years. And then, of course, we have other very good examples like Suzani, that has made some wonderful creations and is really developing some incredible things from leather made from bacteria. So it's quite astounding what she's producing. And things move forward very quickly, I think. But in terms of cost now, what about these materials based on bacteria? So are the prices comparable? Because one of the speakers that we'll be having tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, I can't quite remember, there's a whole host of different conferences available, so you can go and consult those. And this person said that he worked on milk starch. And he produced a yarn from this. So this must be more expensive than chemical yarn, surely. Well, all the different projects that are going on in terms of biomanufacturing, generally speaking, everything is happening in R&D. So you can, for 3 years now, you can find products that can actually be bought, but this is in a very limited series. And the cost, the last one, so this is it's very far down the cycle. So it depends. It depends what you're getting. Spiber has come up with a jacket for North Face, and this was developed in 2015. But in December 2019, there will be 50 different jackets that will be sold, and the price of that will be 1,200 euros approximately per jacket. So they're being produced in these new systems. You can get them on the internet. So we wait for a couple of people to sign up. So they've decided to launch and commercialize this product. Well, what they did for Spiber, and in fact this happened last week, they launched, they set up a lottery. So you can sign up. Just 50 jackets will be sold, and there'll be a draw. And with a bit of luck, if you live in Tokyo, you will be able to go to the store and you can buy your jacket. So can you remind us of the price? Yes, the price. And what about the basic fabric used? So I'm sure it's included in the price, and that explains the price. Well, yes, of course, 1,200 euros for a North Vest jacket is expensive, but for biotechnology, which is very recent, is that expensive? Everything's relative, of course. If you're used to buying products in distribution circuits, mass market systems, this might seem quite expensive to you, but this is about biotechnology, so that explains the expensive price. So it might seem more expensive to some people. That, of course, then you have Blood Trade, who's brought out these hats. They've been made from artificial yarn, and they were $80, and so they were sold in a matter of minutes. So this is a new process. So are people willing to pay for that? So it's almost a kind of fashion attitude, we might say. So I think this is quite close to the North Face vest that you were developing. So and all this leads to, this pushes industry. So if we look at food and fashion, well, food is ahead in some respects, but of course it's not the same production chain. So just to react to the cost issue, and what I found is interesting, 5 years ago, if we wanted new cotton, we paid in euros or recycled. So recycled cotton cost €1. So the recycled cotton cost 20% more. There were extra costs because we had to recycle the yarn. And now, even if this recycled cotton is slightly more expensive, suppliers manage to balance things out. They have such a large demand that they can make economies of scale. So they can propose competitive prices. So the theory. What's interesting then is that biosourcing and biomills, okay, so these materials are more expensive than traditional materials, but in the future, and this is the issue, this is the subject of this conference, perhaps in terms of cost, we will be able to produce economies of scale, but of course these yarns have to be well known, we have to do testing, and so we need information on these new yarns in order to succeed, create partnerships and create economies of scale. So there's another question that I wanted to raise with you. So we've talked about traceability, we've talked about the different materials, we've talked about sourcing. So logistics, transport, we've talked vaguely about the distance and indirect costs, but of course that's a very important factor. But something that I haven't talked about is the actual use of the product, because I get the impression, and last year in one of these roundtables, Jean-Miguel 2183. So this was a pair of jeans was very easy to recycle. So you had long fibers, short fibers, special machines that has to be developed. So this jean was transformed into made from long fibers, and then it was reintroduced into the cycle. So you've we were talking about the use of the garment. So you maintain it better. You maintain it intelligently. So do these products last longer? So okay, this goes back to the fact that these garments are more expensive, but they're also better maintained. So is this a major factor then in terms of biosourcing? This idea of the actual use of the product, the right use of the product. Well, if we look at everything that concerns biosourcing, then we have to look at fashion. So we would take better care of a garment. Yes, of course, if we did that, then of course the garment would last longer. But I just want to go back to this idea of biodegradability that you mentioned before. So everything, all the materials do biodegrade, but it depends on the timeline. So you can say that so all products biodegrade then, but then I don't know what the criteria were for this backpack, how long. So they might say, okay, for us it's biodegradable because in 5 years it's completely transformed into something else. But you also have to look at the end of the life cycle of a product. Well, it depends. Well, in terms of time, the case that I had, and we have to look at the public price, which was under 100 euros. So it was supposed to last 5 years for that price. So the research that I was able to do on this product, it lasted for 2 years, and it was also much more expensive to buy. So we're talking about industrial composting with specific standards as well. Yes, that's also very important. It's very important to remind people of that. Yes, important to point that out. So if you put it in the compost, it should. You think it's going to biodegrade, but no, it doesn't really happen like that. So there are certain very strict composting standards, the temperature, the humidity, and that people at home don't always have. So thank you, dialogue between these three people, these three exports. Well, I'm sure that given all the different leads and the ideas that we've looked at in this first round table, I'm sure you have many questions. Do you have any questions either in French or in English? Any questions? You have a question over there. Can you say who you are? Good afternoon. I'm François Maillet, and I do professional training. I also have a stand here, Aswas Group. So I heard you talk about the fact that we need to review the way in which we design things right from the beginning to the end, but there's always a beginning and an end. So this is a kind of linear process. This was the case in the Middle Ages, and it's the same now. So we wore a garment for 2 or 3 generations. So we didn't really wonder about the beginning and the end because time wasn't really an issue. But then we said, okay, we've now moved into fast fashion. We bring down the prices, and so we make something which is quick and easy. So which ends up in the bin. So we have to click on the linear cycle and move towards this revolution. So I think we're talking about this circular revolution. So the end is a new beginning, and perhaps the product which is of high quality, we can recycle it once. It's still of high quality, and so the process goes on. And all this has to be done. And so through a new way of designing garments, and we have to accept that a product can have several lifetimes, and you're not just going to wear it and throw it away. What do you think about that idea? Thank you for your question. Thank you. In terms of what you're saying about the fact that we have to create things differently in a different way. So I agree entirely with that. We have to think about also consuming in a different way. And so, as you say, we try to move from the circular economy to a linear economy. So we have to have eco-design from the beginning of the product's life. Then we have to use the right materials, biodegradable materials, which can and then nourish the soils, and then a change in terms of the way we consume. So you have a company which proposes this large, very large backpack with lots of different pockets, and in this backpack, for all the different pockets, they propose so that you can cut up this backpack and make smaller products from it. So this backpack was eco-designed, and when you could no longer use this backpack at the end of its life, so let's say the material has split, you can create lots of smaller bags. You can make a toilet bag, for example, from this. So there are all different things that you can do with this. So this is encouraging the consumers to consume differently. So this goes back to the circular economy that you were mentioning before.
We have to educate every member of the life cycle. So we have to educate the suppliers, we have to educate the designers that they're designing properly for a circular economy, and we have, of course, to educate the consumer and everyone's...
And the wholesalers too.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I think education is actually the key, and to work together towards a circular economy.
I can't do better than that. So, is there any other questions? Are there any other questions behind me? Can you say who you are? Who you work for? Frank Luizer. So I work for Anon Tissu. So I had a question in terms of colorants that are made from bacteria. Is it because they're made from bacteria? Are they, are they harmless for the environment, or can these bacteria, could they be bad for the environment, just as bad as a chemical colorant? Well, I can't really speak for the biodesigners that work on this type of biotechnology, but what I can say is that these are bacteria that are naturally secreted and produced, and they secrete the colorants themselves. So we don't have a lot of documentation on why they secrete these colorants. Perhaps it's due to their evolution, so they continue to secrete these colors. But then it's up to the biodesigners so to create the right environment so this bacteria can produce a color. So now, is it dangerous for the environment? Well, you've got bacteria all over, absolutely all over. So, is this product dangerous? Well, they can be carcinogenic. So, is it more dangerous than petrochemicals? Well, I can't speak for the industrial manufacturers, but this hasn't yet been studied. When we develop new technologies, normally we want to develop something which is cleaner and which respects the environment better. So what about this? So yes, producing these colorants is a cleaner system, but so the colorant could be just as dangerous as a synthetic colorant for the environment. Well, basically, we want to produce things in a cleaner way. So I would say that the final colorant, yes, it's cleaner than petrochemical colorants. But in order to know about the impact on the environment, you have to look at the life cycle. So will your petrochemical substance have more impact on the environment than this bacterial colorant? So there are some studies of this kind which are currently ongoing. So we're producing these colorants at room temperature in a very rather short time with the possibility of feeding these bacteria with agricultural waste. So from there, that gives you a kind of idea of what the impact on the environment might be with these bacterial colorants vis-à-vis the petrochemical colorants. Is there another question?
Into what?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jan Erik. I'm from Copenhagen, and I work in the fur business. So, of course, I'm sitting here with a small smile on my face because I work with a product that is organic, it's sustainable, it's degradable when you finish using it. The products are long-lasting. They can be remodeled even after 20, 30 years. So my question to the ladies is, do they see organic materials such as fur and leather, for that sake? Do you see a future for that in your world, and under which conditions?
I am actually working. I love it. It's a great material. I love fur. It's just, I think it's the amount that is used, and it's the way how it's tanned, for example. And there is a really nice way of tan leather. It's called like Deep Mellow is doing it like with rhubarb or olive. So there are possibilities to use the hides from the meat industry to create a long-lasting material. And I think in order to like see it in a circular way, leather and fur is something that can be used. It's just the amount we're using that is a little over the top, and I think that not every leather or like every leather piece needs to be produced. So I think there's just like put too much on the market, because I think good leather pieces are worth like quite a lot of money, but if you put it out for, let's say, 30 euros, it can't be tanned in a good way. Like all the workers in like working with the leather can't be healthy for the environment. So I think we should put it always in balance to create a material that is not like harming the environment or the workers working with it or the consumer afterwards.
Is there another question? Otherwise, thank you to our speakers. I have a question, because what about distribution in this scenario? Where does that fit in? Because the distributor is in touch with the consumer, so does distribution integrate this kind of factor? So how far are they committed to this particular process? We're talking about technology here, we talk about the consumers as well, so where does it fit in? Well, as I see it, the distributor is key. So each distributor keeps their own network of suppliers. And what's certain today is that it's the companies and the employees that try to change the situation. They try to develop products in partnership with companies and to be informed of what currently exists through workshops or information that already exists. So we have some business units in companies that are in charge of doing R&D, either to develop new materials or to create partnerships with consultants, i.e. people who could inspire them and who could help them. So the distributor, well, of course, we couldn't do this without the distributors. So there are partnerships that can be made with suppliers or with financial players. So this is something. So yes, the distributors, I would say, are committed as well. So the person who is the interface with the buyer, sometimes this person isn't well informed to talk about these products because they haven't had the opportunity to be trained. So I think that as well, the training aspect is a key factor that needs to be developed. So do you think the same?
Before you,
Absolutely,
we have to educate
absolutely.
every
Underline
part of the
wholesalers,
chain, yeah.
absolutely. Education, information.
Thank you very much, because in terms of information and education, we've learned an awful lot. So we have our three speakers, Caroline, Caroline, and Sabrina. So these ladies are around, they're exhibiting just close to here. So if you want any information, you can go and see them and study the conference program. We've got other conferences going on at the same time, and I would ask you to come on Wednesday at around 5:30. This is at Fashion Tech, and so that you can discuss with the exhibitors, the participants. So we're talking about the fashion industry at Taxworld and Avantech. So have a good afternoon, and we'll see you for the next conference, which is on connected materials. So this goes back to fake fur. So see you in a moment.